So I read a blog this week in which some moms wrote what it's actually like to be a mother. And I think some of you in the room are really going to appreciate what they had to say. And some of you guys are going to learn a little bit about what your wives and mothers actually go through. One mom wrote, "Silence is golden. Unless you have kids, then silence is suspicious," okay? One mom said, "I don't want to sleep like a baby. I want to sleep like my husband. That guy is just like dead to the world. Kids crying, nuclear war going on. He's still asleep." Another mom, she confessed that once you become a parent, a booty call is when your kid shouts from the bathroom that they need help wiping, okay? There was a mom who said, "People will ask me, 'Can he have this?'" Talking about your son. "Can he have this?" After the first baby, I would respond, "Well, is it organic and homemade?" After the second baby, I'm like, "He can have anything except alcohol and cigarettes," okay? And then one final one that I enjoyed, a mom said, "I tucked my kids in and I said, 'Good night, sweetie. I'll see you in the morning.' And then we laughed and saw each other 11 more times before sunrise." Some of you, that describes last night. That is your experience in the last 12 hours. But you know what? You made it to church today. Good on you. And on behalf of Connect Church, I genuinely want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms in the room. Can we make some noise? Show some appreciation for all the moms that are here. Boy, I got to tell you, Mother's Day is a very interesting holiday because it's literally a celebration of the biggest gift and the biggest burden that a human being can bear. You realize that, right? Being a mother, having a child, genuinely is the greatest gift you can receive, and it is also the biggest burden that anyone can bear. We'll say it at the top: motherhood is wonderful, and motherhood is difficult. Both of those things are true and probably in equal measure for most of us. Not only is motherhood wonderful and difficult, Mother's Day can also be wonderful and difficult for a lot of you. You know, many of you are going to get to see your mom. You're going to get to spend time together. You're going to get to celebrate, have lunch, give gifts, all that sort of stuff. And so you're really excited about today. But many of you may have a little bit of a different perspective or anticipation for today. Perhaps today is difficult for you because you lost your mother. And on Mother's Day, you miss her more acutely than you do at any other time. Or perhaps you don't really have that great of a relationship with your mom. She's still around, but, you know, it's like you're going to have a phone call with her later today, but you just know it's going to be awkward, it's going to be short, and so you're kind of like hyping yourself up and getting ready to make this phone call a little bit later. I mean, Mother's Day absolutely can be difficult. And for some of you, the reason it's difficult is because motherhood is your dream, but it's not your reality yet. And so what I want to do this morning is I actually want to speak to you from the verses, the words of Jesus that we saw in our introductory video. And the reason that I chose this passage instead of a more typical motherhood passage from the Bible is because whether you're a mom or not, I believe that you need to hear the words of Jesus. I believe if you were to take these to heart, they genuinely would give you the rest and the peace that you're looking for in your life. So, what I want to tell you here is that as we read these verses together, there's going to be this temptation to read the words and approach them and interact with them in a very positive and nice but superficial way, okay? That we can look at these words of Christ and we can say, "Oh, well, that's a nice sentiment. Those are nice words from Jesus," but never go beyond that. In fact, I'm afraid that this is one of the ways that we get Mother's Day wrong, is that we celebrate it like it's a veneer. Okay? That is, it's all smiles for photographs, and like on one day a year we'll buy you ladies like a greeting card or something like that. You know, we'll let you take a break from making dinner. We'll take care of that for you, Mom, or whatever. We'll buy you flowers. But by the next day, by tomorrow, the flowers are going to be dead. The kids are going to be screaming again, and you guys are going to be right back to being overwhelmed by the work of being a mother. Too often, Mother's Day is full of sentiment but lacking in substance. And I think that a lot of times we can read the words of Christ in the same way. We can read it with a lot of sentiment And we can say, oh, that's a wonderful sentiment, Jesus. Yeah, I like that. But then there's no substance. There's no change behind it. And so today what I want to do is I want to speak about these verses and even speak directly to you moms, but do it in such a way that actually helps. Do it in such a way that isn't just like shiny and plasticky and fake, but a way that really does acknowledge the difficult job and the wonderful grace that you guys have every single day. I hope that by the time you leave here this morning and you've encountered the words of Christ in this passage, you're like, yes, this is what this mama needs, okay? So let's read Matthew chapter number 11. We're going to start in verses 25 through 26. Jesus, the Bible tells us about Jesus that at that time he prayed this prayer. O Father, Lord of heaven and earth, thank you for hiding these things from those who think themselves wise and clever, and for revealing them to the childlike. Yes, Father, it pleased you to do it in this way. So, translation, Jesus is about to say something that's not intuitive. Okay? If you're going to understand the teaching he's about to give, you're going to have to let down your guard a little bit. You're going to have to open your mind and perhaps consider some things from a perspective that you haven't considered them before. So we read here in verse 28, then Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. You know, Jesus wasn't only talking to mamas here in this passage. He's talking to absolutely everybody. But let's be real. Weary and carrying heavy burdens is a pretty perfect description of motherhood. That's what you guys do. You carry the burdens of your family, and it leaves you feeling, weary, exhausted, tired. You do it because you love them, and you actually do enjoy it. But boy, does it leave you worn out. So in this verse 28, Jesus makes an invitation and a promise, okay? You're going to see an invitation and a promise. The invitation is to anyone who is worn out and weighed down by the stress of life. Jesus says, hey, moms who feel like you have to be able to do it all, this promise is for you. But again, his words are not only to moms and dads. He's essentially saying here, hey, singles, those of you guys that keep searching for your spouse, but you're striking out every single time, this promise is for you. Those of you that have been working too many hours and you can't seem to get ahead, it's just like you're treading water, this promise is for you. Kids who are getting bullied at school, this promise is for you. Pastors who feel inadequate to help the people that they're called to serve, this message, this promise is for you. Religious folks whose faith has made them feel like they're never going to be good enough, like they're never going to measure up. Guess what? This message is for you. The invitation is to everyone who feels burdened, weighed down, and exhausted because of the pace and the pressure of life. And in response, or as a result of the invitation, Jesus makes a promise. What is the promise? Well, he says it's rest. He offers to give each one of us rest. And I got to be honest with you, rest sounds amazing. Hello. I would love a little extra rest. A few more hours of sleep each night, maybe an extra day off, a couple more weeks of vacation, a few more responsibilities on my calendar. I would be very happy if I got some rest. In fact, some of you, when your family asked you as mothers, what do you want for Mother's Day? You said, listen, don't buy me anything. Just let me sleep in. Please, just let me sleep in an extra hour or two and I will be happy. Why? Because rest is an incredible gift and it's something that we all need more of. So the invitation from Jesus here in this passage is to everyone who feels weary and burdened, and the promise is that he'll give you rest. So if you're like me, you're like, yes, please. Where do I sign up? How do I find this rest? Jesus. So he tells us in verse 29 and 30, we'll put it here on the screen for you. He says, you want rest? Here's how you're going to find it. You've got to realize that you were not meant to carry a yoke. God created you to live a life without any stress and responsibilities. You should be sleeping 12 hours a day. You know what? Go ahead, drop out of school. It's okay. Don't worry about it. You're just supposed to rest. You're not supposed to be busy all the time. You should choose to work when you feel like it. You know, this five days a week stuff is nonsense. How about we do 2 days a week? That would give you, yeah, amen, okay. She works for the church. I don't know if I like that. So maybe Jesus said something like that. Maybe Jesus said, don't worry about making your kids dinner tonight. If they need to eat, God will feed them. He'll take care of it. He feeds the birds of the air. He'll feed your kids too, right? What you need is a long vacation and break from life. So take it, girl. You deserve it. Except that's not what Jesus says at all, is it? I made that up if it wasn't clear. In verse 29, what Jesus actually says is, take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light. Now, in order to fully understand the meaning of what Jesus is saying in this verse, you have to understand what the word yoke means. And unless you grew up in Three Hills wearing Carhartt, you might not be familiar with what a yoke is, because it's a farm instrument. Anybody know what a yoke is? I think we can put a picture here on the screen for you. Okay? A yoke is a wooden beam that goes across the shoulders of horses and oxen so that they can pull plows and wagons. You with me? It's that wooden thing that keeps animals connected to one another and connected to something that they're supposed to be pulling and doing. Now, this yoke was a very common item in the first century. Basically, every single family would have had a yoke in their home. Their neighbors would have had yokes. Everybody would have understood what Jesus meant when he said, take my yoke upon you. And to them, his words would have been both surprising and honestly, they might have seemed a little bit disappointing on first glance. Now, because we're from a different kind of society and we don't fully understand this, to us, we're just like, oh, those words are so nice. I like those words from Jesus, but we're totally missing what he's actually saying here. You see, a yoke is a work instrument. It keeps animals tethered to their task. So when Jesus offers a yoke to people who are tired, then he offers what we think a tired mom or an overworked executive or a stressed out teenager needs least. They need a mattress. They need a vacation. They don't need more work. They don't need more equipment in their life to keep them tethered to their tasks. But I want you to listen to what scholar Frederick Bruner had to say about Jesus' words here. He says, Jesus realizes that the most meaningful gift he can give the tired is a new way to carry life, a fresh way to bear their responsibilities. Realism sees that life actually is a succession of burdens. You cannot get away from them. So instead of offering escape, Jesus offers equipment. Jesus means that obedience to his teaching, that is his yoke, will develop in us a balance and a way of carrying life that will give us more rest than the ways in which we've been living so far. How good is that? Rather than offering us an escape from life's burdens, Jesus equips us to carry them well. Ooh, now, if you stop and think about that for a minute, it's not just pretty words. That's helpful. That's reality. That can make sure, moms, that you're able to deal with the stresses of your job. Dads, this will make sure that you can handle the responsibilities of your family. Singles and young people, if you understand this, it will make sure that when you get up tomorrow, you are ready to face the challenges that life throws your way. Rather than offering an escape from life's burdens, Jesus equips us to carry them well. So when we're feeling overwhelmed, we have a new way of handling it. We don't crush a bottle of wine, we pray, because that's the equipment Jesus gave us to deal with it. When we feel overscheduled, we don't just take a day off, we have a Sabbath. When someone curses us, we bless them in return. When they demand that we go with them 1 mile, we volunteer to go with them 2 miles. When the enemy whispers in our ear that we've failed too many times, we hit him with the truth of Scripture that nothing can separate us from the love of God. When Instagram makes us feel inadequate, we remind ourselves that a person's life does not consist in the abundance of their possessions. we have a different set of equipment than the rest of the world. Jesus offers us a way of dealing with the hardships and the burdens of everyday life that equips us or makes us able to handle them and handle them well. The yoke of Christ, when you take that on you, here's the truth, the burdens are not going to go away. You become a Christian and you're not free from responsibility. In fact, you get some new responsibilities, as we'll see in just a moment. But what you do get, what Jesus promises you, is that you will learn to address life's struggles, stresses, and difficulties, not just in the physical realm, but also in the spiritual realm. Because what he says here is you don't just need rest for your bodies and minds. You need rest for your soul. That's what he promises. Take my yoke upon you, and you will find rest for your tired bodies. Yeah, sure. For your exhausted minds? Probably. But what he specifically promises is that you will find rest for your soul. Whew. How good is that, you guys? That is exactly what we need today. We need rest for the physical, rest for the emotional, and we also need rest for the spiritual. Now, there are two things that I want to kind of draw your attention to here in this passage. First, Jesus calls it my yoke. Did you catch that? He doesn't say, take the yoke that God has ordained for you. It's your yoke, and your yoke is different than your yoke, and your yoke is different than his yoke. He doesn't say that. He says, take my yoke upon you. And then he goes on to describe how he is going to walk with us every single day as we are yoked to him. He's going to be right there with us, teaching us, encouraging us, and even bearing our burdens for us. The picture that he gives to us here is of two animals that are linked together and walking in lockstep. Jesus is saying, when you are yoked with me, I will walk with you through everything you go through each and every day. And not only that, the reason that he's able to say that this is true, legitimate, real, rest is that in this picture of being yoked to him, he's the one that's doing all the heavy lifting. He's the one that's carrying the burdens. See, if you were able to carry the burdens all by yourself, then you wouldn't need to be yoked to him. You would just get the yoke that God had ordained for you. But you're not taking your own yoke. You're taking the yoke of Christ, and he is right there with you. It is his yoke. He'll carry it. He'll be the one to make sure you get where you're supposed to go in life and you accomplish the things that you are supposed to accomplish. So hear me now. The rest that Jesus offers in this passage is not the absence of stress and responsibility. It is a reprieve from the lie that you have to carry it all alone. Yeah. This is the rest that Jesus offers to you mothers. This is the rest that Jesus offers to those of us that suffer with illness or mental, emotional problems. The rest is, we're not facing this alone. We are yoked, we are connected, we are linked with the one who is actually able to shoulder the burdens that we carry each and every day. Jesus says, it's my yoke. Take my yoke upon you. Then he promises that his yoke is easy to bear. And his burden is light. This is what a lot of people get wrong about Jesus, is that they misunderstand that following Jesus is still a burden. Some of you became Christians and you thought life was going to get real easy. Nope. That's not how it works. However, despite the fact that following Jesus means we are now yoked to him, we go where he wants to go, we do what he wants to do, he promises us that that burden is easy to bear and it's light. The word that's translated easy to bear, it most literally means kind or well-fitting. He says, if you take my yoke on you, you will find that my burden is kind. It is well-fitted, well-suited for you. Ladies, this world will not always be kind to you. But Jesus will. Your children, they may not always be easy to bear. But the presence of Christ is. Your career may not be super well-fitting for you. But the yoke of Jesus definitely is. He promises that if you want rest, you're going to find rest by attaching yourself to him and wearing his kind, his well-fitting yoke. Oh, man, you guys, I love this passage so much. I read it often. I remind myself of it often. And part of the reason that I think it's so good is that there's a whole nother level or layer to what Jesus is talking about here. See, this entire idea that we give Jesus the burdens that we have in life and he gives us something better in return, that's actually at the heart of the gospel. Yeah. You realize that, right? This is exactly what our faith is all about. If we go to 2 Corinthians chapter number 5, verse 21, we read, "In Christ, God put all our wrongs on him who never did anything wrong so that we could be put right with God." Do you see what Paul says here in this passage? He says, at the heart of our faith, the good news of the Christian religion is that when Jesus was on the cross, all of my sinfulness, the greatest burdens that I bear, the biggest mistakes I made in life, all the people that I've hurt and offended in the last 42 years, all the things that have been done to me, and I carry around bitterness and anger and frustration over it, all of our sin was taken off of us and it was placed on Jesus while he was on the cross. And then it goes on and Paul says the righteousness, the right standing that God had, the free life, the way of living in which we are sinless and united with God the way that we are supposed to be. Jesus had that. I don't have it. You don't have it, but he did. So on the cross, all of my sin burden was taken off of me and placed onto him. And all of his righteousness was taken off of him and it was placed on me. The entire Christian faith is about this exchange of burdens that God offers to us because of his grace. It is because he loves his children so much that he would take our burdens and carry them for us. Do you realize our Savior is well practiced at carrying our burdens? He's been doing it since day one, you guys. Long before you were ever born. He was carrying the burdens of the world. So if Jesus can carry the greatest burden of all, my and your sin, if he can carry that burden, why do you doubt that he is capable and loving enough to carry your struggles each and every day? Moms, you feel like nobody sees you. Nobody knows. And you're probably right, except for one. There is one that sees. There is one that understands. Because he's been carrying burdens just like you for a real long time. And people don't always appreciate him either. We think that we're all alone. Jesus says, you don't have to be. We think we're responsible we're like Atlas, we got the weight of the world on our shoulders and we're trying to hold it up. And Jesus says, you don't have to do that. I can take care of that if you'll take my yoke upon you. If you'll learn from me. If you'll realize I'm gentle. Hey, I'm not like your mom or dad who's harsh, who laid heavy burdens on you as a kid. I'm not like your boss who takes advantage of you and doesn't appreciate you. I'm not like your husband who is never around. I'm not like your wife who doesn't even seem like she cares so much about you anymore. He says, I'm gentle. I'm humble. If you will trust me, if you will yoke, if you will link yourself to me, you will find that my burden is both gentle and well-fitting. And when you wear this yoke, you'll discover rest for your souls. This is why in 1 Peter 5:7, we're told that we can cast our cares on him because he cares about us. He actually cares about us. Now, last week, we were talking about priorities, right? You remember the ball and the rice and all that silliness. We were talking about priorities and ordering our life so that God is first, and we trust that when we put him first, every other thing seems to fall into place, all the other things that are genuinely important, okay? Now, I told you that if you're going to do that, you have to learn to say no a lot more than you do right now. And I promised you that I was going to help you to say no a little bit more easily. And I think that it's understanding this well-fitting, easy yoke of Jesus that will enable us to say no to things more often so that we can say yes to Jesus, okay? The first reason is because you cannot wear multiple yokes. You can't. Can you imagine? Can we put the picture of the oxen or whatever the heck they are back up? I'm not a farmer. I didn't grow up in Three Hills. Okay. They're cows as far as I know. Can you imagine having two yokes? Can you imagine an oxen and a horse being linked together? Can you imagine animals pulling this way and animals pulling that way? No, you can't. Why? Because you can only wear one yoke at a time. So either I'm connected to Christ or I'm attached to something else. Jesus said it this way, no one can serve two masters. You cannot devote yourself to both God and the world. In short, you can't say yes to Jesus and everyone else too. It doesn't work that way. See, I think the reason that so many of us struggle with saying no, even when we want to, you know what I'm saying? We really do want to say no, but we struggle to actually do it because it feels selfish. We can't think of a good reason to say no. We're like, oh gosh, why can't I, quick. Why can't I think of a reason why I cannot help you with this? I can't think of one. Oh, okay. Well, I don't want to seem like a jerk. I don't want to seem uncaring. And so I guess I'll say yes even when I don't want to, because we feel like saying no is selfish. But hear me now, when you are yoked to Jesus, then you realize your purpose in life is not to please everyone. Your purpose is to please an audience of one. There is one person whose opinion matters. Yes. There is one person whose approval will matter in the end. And it's the one to whom you're yoked. And so you've got to decide, I'm going to say yes to Jesus, even if it means that I have to say no to other people. As an example, imagine that your boss comes to you and he says, hey, I need you to start working Sundays, okay? We're short-staffed and I need you to step up. But if you're yoked to Jesus, see, if you're not yoked to Christ, then you might just say, well, I know they really need me and boy, I could use the money and yeah, I know church and God and all that sort of stuff, but whatever. But when you're yoked to Jesus, you recognize that your priorities and schedule are already spoken for. So you say to your boss, hey, listen, I am very sorry, but Sundays are my days of rest and worship, so I can't do it. You're going to have to find somebody else. And you let it be that. And you're like, well, what if they fire you? So you'll find another job. God has a way of honoring people who honor him. Yes. When you're yoked to Jesus, then you follow him. And you say yes to him. And if anybody asks you to take on a yoke that's in conflict with the yoke you're already wearing, you say, hey, I'd love to, but I can't. I've already chosen my priorities. I've had this in my own life as well. So there's this monthly pastors meeting that happens here in Calgary, and I really enjoy going to. I'm not going to lie to you. When I was in Florida as a youth pastor, there were these monthly pastor meetings, and I had to go. It was part of my job, and I hated it. It was so boring. I was like, oh my gosh, I'd rather be home playing video games or something, you know? But here, I've actually come to really like them. I've grown up. So I like catching up with my friends, and I like hearing what's going on in the churches in the city. I want to know what God is up to in other congregations. Like, it is one of the highlights of my month, as crazy as that might sound. But in January, they decided they were going to change the day of the week that this pastor's gathering happened. So now it always falls on my day off, every single time. And I have to be honest with you, there is a little bit of pressure on me from people that I love and respect. And they're like, Dan, I get it. I totally understand, man. Genuinely. I know this is tough. But it's one day a month. This is like one of your days off. It wouldn't be a big deal for you to like just skip your day off, or it's only even half a day. Just forget it. Come in, do some ministry with us, do the work kind of thing. It won't be that big of a deal. But I have to say, no. I'm yoked to Jesus. My Sabbath matters. Getting time off is more important to me than almost anything. And so I've got to protect it. I've got to guard it. And so I've had to say no. So when we wear the yoke of Christ, we actually have the ability to say no in a non-selfish way. Because it's not about me. I'm not just saying no because I'm lazy. I'm not just saying no because I don't like you and don't really want to help. No, I'm saying no because my priorities have been determined. Jesus is the one to whom I'm connected and following every single day. Now, it's also easier to say no because once you wear like a kind or a well-fitting yoke, you don't ever want to go back to an ill-fitting yoke again. If you experience life overflowing, you will never go back to life overwhelming. I will tell you that. The kind, well-fitting yoke of Jesus will be such a light burden compared to what you've been experiencing that you're not going to have that much problem saying no anymore because you know what you would be going back to. I also experienced this a little bit. Last year, I hiked the West Coast Trail, man. It was one of the craziest things I've ever done in my life. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically 100-kilometer, almost said 100-mile. That's the American coming out at me. It's a 100-kilometer forest and beach hike. It's considered one of the most dangerous and remote in all of North America. It's wild. Okay. I did this thing carrying a 50-pound pack every single day. And I would get up in the morning and I would put this pack on and I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing is so heavy. Why did I overpack? And I'm trudging along the beach on Vancouver Island, you know. And one day, it just seemed like the pack was extra heavy, you guys. Like, I don't know, it was hurting in a way that it just hadn't been hurting. And I guess I'm like, well, it's day 3 or 4, whatever it was. I'm getting more tired, so this probably makes sense. But like right here, man, it was just like my pack was rubbing my shoulder raw. I could feel like the skin being abraded away. And I was taking all these breaks and sitting and like resting my pack on logs, you know, blah, 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 blah. So I'm telling you, like 4 hours after I got up and started the hike and had all of these problems, I was like, I got to get this sorted. Because like, if you've ever done a long distance hike with a big pack, you don't want to take off your pack. It stinks to have to hoist that thing back on again, okay? But I was like, I got to deal with it. So what I did is I unbuckled my waist strap and I went to grab my shoulder straps so I could shrug them off. And what I realized is that morning, in my sleep-deprived, exhausted state, I had put the backpack on and the strap had gotten twisted, like rolled in several times. I was wearing it completely wrong. It was an ill-fitting yoke, so to speak. And it made the weight, the burden that I was carrying so much harder to bear than it needed to be. Once I got it situated and settled and I put it back on the way it's supposed to fit, I was like, oh, I'm feeling good. Let's go. And the day was a totally different experience after that. When you have a well-fitting yoke on you from Jesus, you will never go back to an ill-fitting yoke again. Yeah. When you exchange the heavy, almost unbearable weight of the expectations the world puts on you, and you trade them, swap them, exchange them for the light burden that Jesus gives you, everything changes, and you will not go back. So, and by the way, also, just wearing this yoke, it actually keeps you headed in the direction of the purpose that God put you on earth for. So like saying no is not selfish, it's a spiritual thing. It really is. You're not saying no for the wrong reasons, you're saying no for all the right reasons. Okay, I want to wrap this message up this morning by speaking specifically to the moms for a moment. I want to talk to you guys. It is Mother's Day. Boy, we've got a lot of fun stuff out in the lobby if you haven't noticed. My wife's going to tell you more about those in just a moment. We want you to feel loved. We want you to feel special on this particular day. And I want you to know that Jesus has a better way of life for you than trying to live up to the expectations that are placed on you. I don't know where those expectations have come from, that you have to be super mom, that you have to get everything right, that you have to, say yes to everything, and you can't ever have time alone, like you're the savior of the family. I don't know where those expectations have come from. It might have come from social media. It might have come from your mother-in-law. They might be self-imposed. I don't really know. But I want you to understand that Jesus wants to take those unhealthy burdens off of you, and he wants to give you a more sustainable way of life. He wants to give you the equipment you need to handle the stresses of your day, of your family, of your relationship with him, all of it. He'll take care of it if you'll allow yourself to be yoked to him. But what I noticed, I had a different ending to this message. I genuinely did. But as I was walking around the building on Friday, I noticed that in addition to all the pots and the photo booth and everything, that our events team actually put some signs out here on the walls. I don't know if you guys have seen them. If you haven't taken the time to go read them yet, I highly encourage you to do it. And there was one sign in particular that really stuck out to me. And I thought, oh, that's it. That's how I've got to end the message. And so I cut everything I had written, and instead I just perhaps want to read to you something that they put out on the wall in the back. Your kids don't need a perfect mom. They need a loving mom relying on a perfect God. That is the rest and the peace that Jesus wants to give you this Mother's Day. He wants you to know you don't have to have it all together. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to get everything right with your kids because you're not carrying that burden alone. All you need to do is love them and then rely. Trust in God. Give him your burdens and take on his. When you are yoked with Jesus, you will not carry these responsibilities, stresses, burdens, and difficulties all by yourself. So if today you're feeling weary and heavy burdened, I want to challenge you to turn to Jesus because you will discover that he is kind, gentle, humble, and he is the one who's going to give you true rest for your soul.